Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. I'm Jesse Waters, obviously, in for Tucker. Just hours ago, Joe Biden delivered a speech that marks a clear turning point in his administration. It's a declaration of war against nearly 80 million Americans. And it's a promise from Joe Biden that he'll ignore the Constitution and basic principles of federalism just to get what he wants. This afternoon, Joe Biden announced that most businesses in this country are required to start forcing employees to either get the COVID vaccine or submit to regular COVID tests.
My job as president is to protect all Americans. So tonight, I'm announcing that the Department of Labor is developing an emergency rule to require all employers with 100 or more employees that together employ over 80 million workers to ensure their workforces are fully vaccinated or show a negative test at least once a week.
Joe Biden added that if state governors don't go along with this, he'll, quote, use my power as president to get them out of the way. What power does the president have to override state governments on this issue exactly? Joe Biden didn't say. Maybe it's the same authority that allowed the CDC to suspend all evictions in the country. This administration no longer cares about the rules. They'll do whatever they want. Keep in mind, less than a year ago, Joe Biden told us that vaccines would never be mandatory. He knew he didn't have the authority to do this.
Should vaccines be mandatory?
No, I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory.
Now Joe Biden's threatening the unvaccinated more than he's threatening the Taliban. It's the same exact story that we saw with the CDC's eviction moratorium. First, Joe Biden said he wouldn't do it, then he did it anyway. So there's no legal justification at all. But listen carefully to Joe Biden's scientific justification. Tonight, Joe Biden appeared to admit that the COVID vaccines aren't very effective.
We're going to protect vaccinated workers from unvaccinated coworkers. We're going to reduce the spread of COVID-19 share of the workforce that is vaccinated in businesses all across America.
Wait a minute. If the vaccines work, why do the vaccinated need protection from the unvaccinated? Again, Joe Biden didn't say. He also didn't explain why vaccinated travelers still need to wear masks on airplanes. Instead, tonight, Joe Biden announced steeper fines for travelers who don't obey.
The Transportation Safety Administration, the TSA, will double the fines on travelers that refuse to mask. If you break the rules, be prepared to pay.
The irony is that today, while Joe Biden was announcing these mandates, Kamala Harris spoke out against, quote, government interference in what she called personal well-being decisions. Now Republicans are responding. Republican Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel has just announced that the Republican National Committee will sue the Biden administration over this order. Quote, when his decree goes into effect, the RNC will sue the administration to protect Americans and their liberties, unquote. Matt Walsh is host of the Matt Walsh Show. He joins us to respond. Well, Matt, this looked like a temper tantrum over Afghanistan, the president just taking out his anger on the country, on businesses. How do you see it?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting that we were assured for 4 years that Donald Trump is a tyrant, that he is, Hitler incarnate. And meanwhile, he was like the least tyrannical president we've had in a very long time with his, with the way that he used his authority. No, we had to elect this rotting bag of oatmeal to get a real tyrant. I mean, that's what Joe Biden, as you point out, this is not the first time that he has explicitly said he doesn't have the authority to do something legally and then done it anyway. So we could sit here till we're blue in the face and say he doesn't have the authority to do it. He doesn't have the authority to do it. It doesn't matter. He admits he doesn't have the authority to do it, but he's going to do it anyway. I think all of us as Americans, we have to understand this, that is, as far as they're concerned, the powers that be, the legal justification is that they want to do it, and what are you going to do about it? That's really their justification, which is why maybe this, in the end, is a good thing in the sense that it's a time for choosing for Americans and American business owners and American citizens. Are we going to comply and lie down to this, or are we finally going to stand up and say, you know what, it's not going to happen? You want to send You want to send the army in and shut down millions of businesses and start arresting business owners, because that's what you're going to have to do. I think we have to draw that line. If we don't draw it here as Americans, then we may as well forget about this country and forget about freedom entirely.
Well, Biden's going to run out of federal employees to enforce these mandates, because if 500,000 federal employees aren't going to get vaxxed, they're going to get fired. So he's just going to run out of little boots on the ground to visit these businesses and hand them slips and fine them. My assessment is that no one's going to trust Joe Biden anymore. After he declared independence from the pandemic in July, after he said there weren't going to be mask mandates, after he said no vax mandates, he took off his mask in this big show, and now he throws down the gauntlet. And we go back to this permanent pandemic. Same thing with Afghanistan. Taliban wasn't going to take over. We got this under control. Next thing you know, Kabul's falling and Americans are stranded. No one believes him anymore.
No one believes him or trusts what he has to say, for a lot of good reasons. Number one, he doesn't even know what he's saying half the time, and that's pretty clear. But I also think the other part of this is that no one is going to trust the vaccines. There was already a problem of especially from the perspective of the federal government and the people that are pushing the vaccines. There's a problem. People don't trust them. Well, you're not going to convince people to trust the vaccines when you go about it this way. And if you're worried about quote unquote conspiracy theories and all this kind of stuff, well, having the federal government tear the Constitution up to force these substances into your arms, that is not going to quell those conspiracy theories. And as you pointed out, if the vaccines work, as many of us have pointed out, do the vaccines work or not? Because if they do, then it shouldn't matter to you if you're a vaccinated person whether or not your coworker has the vaccine. That's the question they cannot answer. The other question they can't answer, by the way, is what about natural immunity? Does that not exist? We're just pretending that natural immunity doesn't exist. In his order that he passed down today, natural immunity doesn't factor in. We're just pretending that that's not a thing. Well, the science tells us that it is a thing and that it provides lasting protection. But we're throwing that on the burn pile, I guess.
Well, as you said, Matt, if you've been vaxxed, nothing to be afraid of for the unvaxxed. Doesn't make any sense. He's taking a sledgehammer to vaccine confidence. Matt Walsh, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Harmeet Dillon's a civil rights attorney. She joins us to assess whether any of these mandates are actually legal. So, Harmeet, it looks like he's pulling the Occupational Safety and Health Administration deal, OSHA, as it's called. Basically, the federal government could make any rules for workplaces to reduce hazards. So he's pulling out of that bag of tricks, OSHA, to make this work. Is this going to fly?
Well, I don't think it's going to fly, and I'm certainly one of the constitutional lawyers who plans to file a legal challenge to this unconstitutional order as soon as the regulations are announced. And we have multiple clients who are asking us to do this, and I think that we're going to be joined by many other challenges. So OSHA is a very weird way to go about this, and OSHA has original set of regulations that were passed at the beginning of OSHA decades ago. Then it has some additional regulations that were passed after, notice and comment. What he's trying to do here is announce them under this very rarely used emergency provision, and the emergency provision provides that there has to be some kind of immediate, shocking, unusual threat to the workplace that's dire, and there isn't time to go through the normal process to do this. That's obviously not the case here. We've been living with COVID for 18 months now. It's not even a pandemic anymore. It's an endemic. It's something that we're living with. And Ron Klain, the chief of staff, actually retweeted a comment from somebody on Twitter saying that this was actually a workaround to get around his promise that he wouldn't do a federal vaccine mandate. They're using OSHA, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So the White House is acknowledging that this is really fake. Okay?
Yeah. And they're not even calling it a mandate. They're calling it a requirement.
Right.
Like we're not going to notice the lingo changed.
Right. So I think it's totally illegal on the private employer side. Now, on public employers, you didn't mention a major carve out. The postal workers are not going to have to get vaccinated under the federal part of this mandate. I mean, talk about vectors of disease who go around to every household in the United States. Why are they exempted, whereas a lot of workers in America today for companies of over 100 people are working from home? Why should they get vaccinated? And, you know, to the point where we're ignoring the science. I mean, I think a lot of what we're seeing here with the illiteracy about science is simply a product of our very lacking educational system in this country. This is scientifically baseless, and, you know, like Matt said, people are not going to trust public health officials going forward. What about a real threat to our health? People are not going to believe public health officials. That's a huge problem for our country. So this is a shambles. This is a disgrace. And I think we're going to see the courts clogged with litigation challenging this and other aspects of the Biden agenda that are really decreasing our confidence both in science and in the government. And also, you know, frankly, coming at the worst possible time for a struggling American economy.
Harmeet, you can't upset the postal workers because they're the ones who have to hand out the ballots. You know, you got to get those mail ballots out unsolicited, Harmeet. You don't want to upset those people. And I think if you can listen closely, you can hear every HR department in the country go hit the liquor cabinet after this, because it's going to be, it's going to get rowdy in the workplace.
I'm an employer.
Yeah.
It is going to be impossible to administer this, and who are the police going to be policing it, and who's going to pay the cost of it? It is effectively a tax on the American employer, and I think it's not going to fly, frankly.
I would agree. Harmeet Dillon, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
In the race to which country can have the most tyrannical coronavirus restrictions, Australia is telling the rest of the world to hold its beer, literally. According to multiple news reports, the New South Wales Health Department in Australia is now limiting the amount of alcohol that residents can get delivered to their homes. Residents who are locked down are allowed just 6 beers, 6, or a bottle of wine per day. That's it. Residents of one apartment complex said the health department's searching all bags and packages that come into the building. Any alcohol above the limit, immediately confiscated. They probably drink it. This isn't about health. It's about the new world order they're trying to create. And that's not a conspiracy theory. It's what they're admitting out loud. Here's a health officer in New South Wales today.
We will be looking at what contact tracing looks like in the new world order. Yes, it will be pubs and clubs and other things if we have a positive case there.
Australia is looking more and more like the prison colony they once were. We hope the rest of the Western world is taking notice. Larry Elder was just attacked in broad daylight in L.A. He'll tell us about that next. Plus, his response to Joe Biden's divisive coronavirus speech. We just heard that Joe Biden's mandating vaccines for 80 million private sector workers. Larry Elder's running for governor in California. The recall election there is on September 14th. He joins us with his reaction. Larry, I don't care what you think of vaccines. You're for them, you're against them. America got a little less free today, and there's nothing we're going to be able to do to change that.
Well, you're right, and I'm not anti-vaccine. I've been vaccinated. I think vaccines do work. I'm in a high-risk category, but a lot of people have made a very different decision. And you're quite right. Freedom ought to stand for something. This is on a collision course to the United States Supreme Court, and I believe that what Joe Biden just now did will be ruled to be unconstitutional. It'll take a while for it to get there, but I think maybe 5-4, maybe even 6-3, it's going to be determined to be unconstitutional, Jesse.
The problem is people in California, Larry, they love it. They don't care if it's legal. They just want to jam this stuff down people's throats, into their arms. They don't care about whether it's right or wrong. They just go along with whatever the government tells them.
Well, I'm not sure how much longer that's going to last. A whole lot of people are ticked off. That's why 2 million people signed that petition, Jesse. A third of them were the very people, independents and Democrats, who voted for him just 2 years earlier. A whole lot of people are upset about this. My opponent, Gavin Newsom, has mandated that if you're a state worker and you've not been vaccinated, you're going to be tested once a week and you're going to be required to wear a face mask at work. A lot of people are hopping mad about that. Nurses are mad about it. Cops are mad about it. Firefighters are mad about it. There's going to be a lawsuit, and as I said, this is going to be on a collision course up to the United States Supreme Court, and ultimately the people who want freedom are going to be vindicated.
And that governor there has failed to manage that state, whether it's the water, whether it's the energy, whether it's the forests. Whether it's the pandemic, he has failed to manage that state. And that's really what this entire election is about, or should be about. But Larry, they don't want it to be about that. They want it to be about personal attacks. You were attacked broad daylight yesterday in LA. Here's that clip. Watch.
Impact from behind.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
So you see the white lady in the gorilla mask throwing eggs. What exactly happened there, Larry?
Well, she might be one of the 20,000 people that were released early from our prisons, felons, many of whom were violent offenders under this governor. I don't know. We have two soft on crime DAs. I consider this to be one of the many intersections in California, the intersection between lawlessness and homelessness. I was at a homeless encampment in Venice, and a lot of people are angry. Homeowners are angry. Families are angry. Children have to go and pass these people to and from school. And the homeless population is in danger, and it's also a health hazard, and nothing's being done about it. That's one of the many failures of this governor. So it was a very angry, ugly scene. You know, if I were a Democrat, obviously, this would be called systemic racism. They'd be calling it a hate crime. I don't like to play that game. I do know this. There was a big article about me, a negative, in the New York Times. It never once mentioned that I'm black, never once mentioned that I would be the first black governor of California. I never made a big deal out about that. I don't want people to vote for me or against me because I'm black. But on the very same page of the New York Times, there was a big article about the, quote, first female governor of New York, close quote. Even though she didn't get elected, she was basically appointed because the other governor resigned. So they cared about the first when it was a female Democrat, but couldn't give a rip about it the first when it was a black Republican.
I'll say it looks like a hate crime to me. Gorilla mask, first potential black governor of the largest state in the country. We reached out to Newsom's office, to Maxine Waters' office, to Kamala Harris, asking them to condemn. No response. How does that make you feel?
Crickets.
Yeah.
Crickets. And when Gavin Newsom's children were criticized because Gavin Newsom mandated that you wear face masks outdoors, and his kids were at summer camp not wearing face masks, we put out a statement saying that leave Gavin Newsom's children out of this. But the governor has not put out a statement about this white woman, apparently a white woman wearing a gorilla mask, threw an egg at me. I don't expect that because, look, all these people have come in. Joe Biden has made a statement. Bernie Sanders has made a statement. Barack Obama's cut a commercial, and nobody has uttered the following words, Jesse: Gavin Newsom has done a good job for the people of California. You won't hear that because he hasn't. Not on crime, not on homelessness, not on the decline in the quality of public education. A former state senator, leader of the state senate at the time, her name is Gloria Romero. She's still a Democrat, has crossed party lines, and has endorsed my candidacy, largely because of school choice, a cause that I'm going to champion. So this is across the board. It's not just Democrats, not just independents. People are fed up, which is why people are leaving California for the first time in our state's 170-year history.
Another thing you won't hear about is this story in the mainstream media. Can't find it on CNN. Washington Post won't cover it. Just imagine if it had been the other way. Stacey Abrams, Maxine, something like that. Forget about it. But this is how they rig elections, Larry. You get the big media colludes with the big donors to suppress negative stories that come out of their precincts, and then they hurl negative smears at you. And that's how they rig elections, and that takes away the power of the people to vote freely and fairly. You just mentioned Obama releasing this video message about you. Let's listen to that.
Hello, Californians. You've got a big choice to make by September 14th. Governor Newsom has spent the past year and a half protecting California communities. Now Republicans are trying to recall him from office and overturn common sense COVID safety measures for healthcare workers and school staff. Your vote could be the difference between protecting our kids and putting them at risk.
Bringing in the big guns, Larry, Barack, Joe Biden, Kamala, Netflix CEO Reed Hastings throwing his wallet around. Man, they're all in, because if you win, that just shows the liberal mechanism that they have supermajority fail in that state.
Well, that's right. and Obama called this the Republicans. 63% of Hispanics voted for Gavin Newsom 2 years earlier. Now the polls show a majority of Hispanics want him out. I just now mentioned former Democrat Senate Leader Gloria Romero has crossed party lines to support me. A majority of independents now want him gone, and they voted for Gavin Newsom 2 years ago. So it's a nice try. Notice Obama did not say Governor Gavin Newsom has done a good job for the people of California.
Exactly.
Because you can't defend this man's record. It is indefensible.
Exactly right. All right, fresh off the birthday party in the vineyard, Barack Obama weighing in on Larry. Larry, good luck out there. Thank you.
And don't forget, go to electelder.com, throw a little something in the tip jar, make this a fair fight. My opponent has raised $75 million already. We're going to be outspent. So let's make it a bit of a fair fight. Go to electelder.com.
September 14th. That is the day. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you.
We told you back in April about the anti-gun extremist the Biden administration nominated to lead the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. His name, David Chipman. Tucker recently ran down the list of some of his unhinged beliefs.
We do know that what he said publicly tells us all we need to know about how he got this job. In October 2018, for example, David Chipman told The Hill that AR-15 should be treated, quote, just like machine guns. Well, machine guns are banned in this country. He believes AR-15s, the single most popular rifle in America, should be banned. Chipman made that remark in his capacity as a policy advisor for an anti-gun group, one of the many funded by Michael Bloomberg. In 2012, he suggested on MSNBC that the Secret Service shouldn't carry firearms. And last year, David Chipman openly mocked the millions of Americans who are buying firearms to protect their families from the crime wave that David Chipman's party has unleashed on the country.
That guy, David Chipman's beliefs were so extreme that even some Democrats refused to support his confirmation. That's why today, the White House withdrew his nomination. But that doesn't mean the Biden administration is going to stop trying to undermine the Second Amendment. We'll be watching very closely to see who Joe Biden nominates in David Chipman's place. And of course, we'll keep you informed. After the debacle in Afghanistan, China's realized that Joe Biden's weak. Now China's testing Joe Biden with a major military operation. That's straight ahead.
Sunday on Fox News Channel.
The White House is now asking Congress to provide green cards to tens of thousands of Afghan refugees so that they can stay in the country indefinitely. Joe Biden's also demanding that lawmakers provide more than $6 billion to help resettle Afghan refugees on U.S. military bases. According to the Wall Street Journal, the money would also provide, quote, resettlement benefits to Afghans. Stephen Miller is a former senior White House advisor. He joins us to assess. Stephen, I remember back in the day when Afghan veterans died waiting in line for health care at Obama-Biden's VA hospitals. And then Obama-Biden bureaucrats paid them bonuses to cover up these wait lists. Now they're bringing in Afghans, giving them green cards, health care, probably free college tuition, food stamps. That doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
Well, President Trump used to say that under President Obama, illegal aliens were treated better than our veterans, which of course is true today under President Biden. We can now add to that under President Biden, unvetted, unverified, unauthorized Afghan nationals are also treated better than our veterans. Let me briefly break down for your audience what is in the proposal. Now, the Biden administration is relying on the fact that many in the media either won't understand or won't care to explain in their newspapers or their other outlets what is actually in the proposal. And you have summarized it exactly and correctly. It provides free lifetime welfare to all Afghan nationals that Biden has flown into the United States to date, or that he may choose to fly here at any point over the next 13 months. And we can assume that if that were to be included in the upcoming government funding bill, it would just be continually extended every year thereafter. But that's only just part of it. It keeps going. They redefine Afghan national to mean anybody who has ever lived for a length of time in Afghanistan, even if they're not living there now and haven't lived there in many, many years. So in other words, it allows Joe Biden to go to, say, for example, Pakistan, fill planes up with Afghan nationals who've been living in Pakistan for decades, fly them to the United States, and give them lifetime welfare. It also gives them, as you correctly mentioned, green cards. What's a green card? Permanent residency and a path to voting citizenship. You know what else comes with that? Chain migration. So if you bring in, say, 100,000 people, they can then bring in 500,000 people. And that's not all. They also include a catch-all waiver. Get ready for this. A catch-all waiver that allows Mayorkas to waive the statutory, in other words, the legal entry bars on people who are guilty of trafficking, who are guilty of human and sex trafficking, who are guilty of drug crimes, who are guilty of a wide variety of criminal offenses, or who present a public health threat. So in other words, on the same day that you are being ordered to surrender to all of these government mandates, all health mandates are waivable for, you guessed it, Afghan nationals.
So, Stephen,
that is a summary of the proposal.
Let me get this straight. So if you're an opium trafficker, or you're a dude that has a child bride in tow that got on the plane. Because remember, only 7% of these people we brought over were actually helping us. The rest of these people were not. They just got to the plane fast enough, or the Taliban let them through and then said, you take them. Probably not sending their best. Exactly.
Joe Biden's immigration policy was literally outsourced to the Taliban. You think that would have happened under Donald Trump? I don't think so. The Taliban is choosing now who gets to be an American citizen. This project, Jesse, will not end well.
Well, I don't trust Biden to vet these people. He couldn't even vet his VP. Look what happened to her.
That's exactly right.
Stephen Miller, thank you.
Or everybody. His ATF nominee, or anyone else for that matter.
Or anybody, right? Thanks so much.
Stop the bill. Thank you.
China's government knows Joe Biden and our military leaders are totally inept. Our disastrous exit from Afghanistan made that very clear. Now China's testing Joe Biden. Chinese warplanes have just entered Taiwan's air defense zone. What happens next? Gordon Chang's a senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute. He joins us. So Gordon, do we have a treaty with Taiwan? If China physically assaults Taiwan, does the United States have to respond militarily to protect Taiwan?
No, we don't have a mutual defense treaty. We have the Taiwan Relations Act, which requires the United States to sell weapons to Taiwan and a few other things. But most of our obligations are those that have been passed down from administration to administration for things like the 6 assurances and a number of other items that have been really State Department generated.
Okay, good. So that gives me a sense of relief that Biden's not going to have to go in there and go crazy. But the problem is Joe Biden could go crazy at any time. You don't know what he's capable of. You don't know who's making his decisions for him, if he's even making his own decisions. So China's rattling its saber in Taiwan and the Straits. They've seen how we've dealt with our allies, our enemies throughout the world so far. We burned NATO just to get out on Biden's timeline. And so they're testing us. What are the implications?
Well, the implications are that China will actually try to start a conflict with Taiwan, or it will do something that accidentally will devolve into conflict. But it's not just Taiwan, because I think Russia, Iran, their terrorist allies are going to take advantage of it. So we could have conflict on both ends of the Eurasian landmass, and basically what we're talking about is the next world war.
So the Iranians, I'm sure, not going to jump back into the nuke deal that Joe Biden's begging them to re-enter, right? So you have that. You have the Russians probably going to hack again. Remember, Biden gave them that little list of things they weren't allowed to smoke? Okay, I'm not so sure Putin's going to pay much attention to that anymore. And the Chinese will probably cause problems for us in North Korea and basically see where we're soft. Do you think Biden and the generals have a strategy to contain that type of action or not?
Not right now, because they're preoccupied with Afghanistan, and I think that essentially they're just trying to get out of that without more political turmoil. So really right now we've got a number of hotspots, and it's not just Taiwan. It's also in India, in Ladakh, in the Himalayas, and also Japan in the East China Sea. There are a number of places that China is pushing right now. And remember, Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, he's the most ambitious person in history, and he really needs to take Taiwan to preserve his legitimacy, because that's what he talks about all the time. He's got so many domestic problems at home, Jesse. He needs a war. And by the way, as you point out, he looks at Biden and thinks he's incapacitated or incapable. So what could go wrong?
And he also looks at Biden and knows his son still owns a major stake in a Chinese concern worth millions that he hasn't liquidated. So he's compromised. We know it. I think they gave him a bunch of diamonds, too, if I recall correctly. Gordon Chang, thank you so much. We know whatever decision Biden makes will be the wrong one. History tells us that. A professor at a major university has just decided he's had enough of the indoctrination that occurs on college campuses. He's just left his job in dramatic fashion. He joins us to explain what he did. That's next.